Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Investment Event of the North is brought to you by EMX Royalty Corp.
New metals are coming to the fore due to energy transition. First Phosphate is serving the lithium-ion battery industry. CEO John Passalacqua is CEO, and Gary Stanley is founder of Global Mineral Strategies. Gentlemen, welcome.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
John.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Talk about First Phosphate. What is the addressable market, John?
Yeah, the addressable market is for lithium iron phosphate battery. In case some people don't know, lithium iron phosphate battery is now 70% of battery output out of China. So it's about 70% of the batteries in the world, if you assume that most batteries are being made in China right now. So this is, in the lithium ion space, there are really two types of batteries that have survived out down here to sort of the last round, and it's the nickel manganese cobalt battery and the lithium iron phosphate battery. And it looks like both are going to win. Why? Because nickel manganese cobalt has one sector of the market, which is usually the high intensity, the high range market. But LFP, lithium iron phosphate, has got smaller, more suited towards mass adoption vehicles, and also all of energy storage.
Now, LFP market, I believe, is mostly tied up by the Chinese manufacturers as well, too. So what can be the market for First Phosphate?
Yeah, most of them are coming out of China, but as you know, with the Inflation Reduction Act and prerogatives around the world to bring supply chains back home, it is a very important supply chain to establish in North America. So that's what we're really working on, is addressing what we can in terms of raw materials, but also addressing the downstream, which is going to help us to integrate with other producers of other parts of the supply chain to bring LFP battery supply chain to North America for independence.
So the operations for First Phosphate are focused on Quebec. So what's the work that's been done to date?
Yeah, so there's really three pillars to the organization. The first pillar being the mining, where we will be extracting and purifying phosphate. So right now we've done a PEA study in one of our properties, Lac Colonial, and we've also got another advanced drilling project at Bégin-La-Marche, where we recently completed a 25,000 meter drill program, and we're finding exceptionally high grades of phosphate in igneous rock, which creates a lot of our second pillar, which is this purified phosphoric acid. So we've already been able to take a bulk sample, create apatite, which is very high purity phosphate, and then convert that into purified phosphoric acid, which is the high grade phosphate that goes into making LFP battery. So we're at that stage. Next stage is to decide which of these properties we will move into feasibility study, and to work also on our downstream processes, which is the creation of purified phosphoric acid as our second pillar, and then the third pillar being the creation of iron phosphate precursor to LFP, and LFP itself, the cathode active material that goes into the cathode of the LFP battery.
Now, Gary, I introduced you at the beginning. You're with Global Mineral Strategies. You're also on the advisory board with First Phosphate. I was wondering if we could step back and then look at the critical mineral industry. So I think it's almost about 2 years since we've seen the Inflation Reduction Act that has been introduced. Can you talk about the work that has been done to date? This is about resiliency for the critical mineral chain in North America. What's some of the concrete examples or achievements that you can point to?
So a couple of things immediately jump to mind, beginning with the two consecutive U.S. administrations had made a determined policy direction that a North American battery supply chain was absolutely essential in order to establish not only our own capabilities here, but quite frankly, to ease our dependency on China. So you had two consecutive administrations that focused federal resources specifically to address this area. So things like the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS Act, all of these are to be sending the signals to the marketplace that this is something the U.S. government, and particularly in partnership with Canada, is serious about addressing our shortfall. And quite frankly, unless everyone was asleep during COVID, there was an exposure to the fact that battery and critical mineral supply chains have had an area of vulnerability that is unsettling at the national security, but also the economic security levels. So there's been funding, there has been government resources, but quite frankly, there's also been building the kinds of relationships with international partners, particularly Canada and the United States, that have the solution to address this problem long term.
Now, are these investments going to survive low prices right now? So I look at what's happened with the nickel industry, for instance, and you've had some mines that have been shutting in Australia due to the scale that's been built out in Indonesia. And then I also look back to last decade as well, too, when everybody was making the run up with rare earths. We saw what was happening with Mountain Pass, and then the market kind of went back to China.
So the short answer is it has to happen. In other words, there has to be the kind of commitment necessary to make these supply chains not only stood up, but sustainable long term. And quite frankly, there will come a time when the rest of the world has to make a decision that if we're going to do this the right way, there's going to be a premium that has to be paid for that, because you're never going to be able to price compete against China with their labor and their environmental violations that they make, plus the dumping that is a part of their regime. So it's really incumbent upon countries like Canada and the United States to stay resilient in this process despite what happens to China. Because quite honestly, they have the ability to send market signals repeatedly: rare earths, gallium, germanium, indium. It's just a long list of the Chinese saber rattling, showing the rest of the world they have the ability not to just disrupt your supply chains, but frankly destroy them. And if we weren't paying attention 15 years ago, we should have been, because the kind of things that the Chinese were doing back then have just resurfaced. So I think it's absolutely essential for the Western world to find a way to make these supply chains resilient, reliable. Long term comes the affordability issue.
This is a question for two of you. I'm going to start with Gary first. I was looking for what are going to be some bullish signs of a turnaround in this market. So I talked again about what's happening with nickel. We've also seen the slump that's happened with lithium. We've also seen EV sales that have been a little soft through this period right now. What's some bullish signs right now? What do you think, Gary, is going to be signs of a particular turnaround in the critical mineral space? Although, exception obviously being copper. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go by all means.
Yeah.
What I would say is the signs that we looked for in both the Canada and the United States is the sheer fact of the number of projects that are being stood up, and quite honestly is just the level of expertise. The level of expertise as well as the level of capital, and quite honestly, the level of research and development and engineering is unprecedented. And it is one of the things that immensely impresses me about partnering with someone like John and the folks at First Phosphates, because some of the technologies that they're doing is absolutely cutting edge, state of the art, as good as anybody in the world. And so to see that kind of commitment to this at the private sector level, but also the public sector at all levels, provincial, federal, state, federal, in the States and Canada, shows that there is a long-term commitment to this process. And there has to be resiliency if we're going to establish the kind of supply chains that makes energy transformation, EV transformation, not a concept, but a reality.
John, bullish signs in the critical mineral space.
Yeah, so look, you're hearing this coming from an ex-stock trader. I know what you mean, but when you say bullish, prices going up, people making money in the stock market, smile on their faces. So let's put that aside for a second. Now let's look at bullish, what it means from supply chain perspective, from companies actually undertaking to work on building mines and secondary transformation. The market is tremendously bullish. If you look at where the supply patterns are going, we're going to need 10 times the amount of purified phosphoric acid that there is in the Western world, according to us. There's other more conservative papers that say it might be 2 to 3 times. I think it's about 10. And I think I'm being kind of neutral, middle of the line. So for us, that's bullish. For a company like ours, this is very bullish to get into the sector, because we know this is going to be like what lithium did, right? And lithium sure went up and it came back down, but eventually all these materials are going to be needed, and there will be dips along the road. And for the traders, there's the highs and the lows, and it's a very volatile sector. But long term, it's bullish. It's bullish. Like the supply patterns, we need all these critical minerals. They're not there. We've got to get to them as soon as possible. So I think bullish from the standpoint that there's going to be demand for them. Now, bullish in terms of the stock charts, well, okay, the stock market can be a little bit, how would you say, can be a little bit flimsy sometimes, can make rational decisions, irrational decisions. It's based on interest rates. It's based on international politics. But you're on. If you look at I think the trend is like this, bullish, and then yes, you can have huge swings in between. It's like the rational market hypothesis theory, right? Sometimes you can be 200% above real value, and sometimes you can be 200% below real value, and it goes like this. But guess what? I think we would all agree that most of these critical minerals companies are trading way below what fair value should be. So that's also extremely bullish for the investing community. Maybe not for the traders who are trying to pick out the 20, the 50, the 300, and they want to know when it's going to cross, and then everyone's going to start buying again. But I think for some people who are seeing these markets like I am, markets that you can't really trade in, it's very difficult to trade these markets, but if they're markets where you can build positions in, if you're building positions, you got to kind of come in at certain times. And, I think things are looking very favorable. I mean, take so many companies out there. I want to just give you an example of First Phosphate. We have $18 million invested in this company over the past 2 years. We have a team that goes day and night. We've been able to get to purified phosphoric acid. This is equivalent to getting to, lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide. And our market cap is $10 million. Unless we've screwed up really bad that we deserve to be down there, that would be suggestive of, quite discounted premiums. Not just us, but so many other companies out there. People are frustrated about it. I'm not frustrated about it at all. We're here building a business. We're going to build a business when the stock charts are up here, when they're down here, and we have to navigate that as CEOs. We have to navigate through all that and make good decisions all the way along. So yeah, bullish, hugely bullish.
John, last word with you. Milestones over the next 12 months.
Milestones over the next 12 months. So we've done 25,000 meters at our Beijing-La-Marche property. We immediately booked the engineering crew to do the mineral resource estimate, as well as the PEA. So that should be out here by the end of the year. We're also working on our further transformation of phosphate into lithium iron phosphate cathode active material. We're looking into how to get into that market a little bit early if we can. And then lots of surprises along the way. Like we look at this as kind of like a winding road. We're not looking at like point A to point B. We certainly have our direction to get to point B, but in the meantime, you got to follow the curves, and you got to adapt your business and move with the times. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're having a lot of fun at it too. I have great people like Gary on board now, guiding us from the perspective of how do we make this sort of a North American industry, right? How do we have that bigger view of not just ourselves here locally, but Quebec, Indigenous communities, Canada, U.S., North America, everybody pulling in the same direction for, like what Gary was saying, eventually all these supply chains have to be established here. And I think the government is very, very clear. And it's not about the letter of the law, it's the spirit of the law. We want our supply chains over here, right? I'm not saying that we're ethnocentric, we don't want to deal with the rest of the world. Sure we do, we're all very internationalist, but we need to have a base here for our children, for our future, for our independence and also our autonomy in terms of, just economic, military autonomy. So because of that, like I said again, just bullish. Big time, long-term bullish on critical minerals.
John, Gary, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Pleasure's all mine.
My name is Michael McRae here at the Mining Investment Event of the North for Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Investment Event of the North is brought to you by EMX Royalty Corp.